Hello tree growers, this is Kevin Kelly with windbreaktrees.com. We're going to talk a little bit about planting the Austree willow. The Austree willow is one of my favorite trees for a fast growing windbreak tree. It really does a good job. I like them. They don't live longer, they don't do well past about 25 years, but during that time period you have a lot of windbreak protection. So I'm going to explain a little bit on the different ones we kind of plant. We plant cuttings and we sell and plant potted ones. Let's start off first with the cuttings. We've got these, what we call our 15-inch cuttings. We like to soak these in a bucket of water for a few days until the roots just start to form. Little roots will pop out on the edge of the stem. And when you see them just starting to pop out, that's when you want to plant it. You want to plant it so only 2 inches of the tree is actually sticking out of the ground. This all needs to be in the ground. There's different ways to do that. You just need to get something to get a hole in the ground. You can use something like this to make a hole. And you can put it in there like that and push it in. Or we've got, if you're doing a bunch of them, this works really good. It's a little drill on the end of a auger here, and just make a little auger. And go ahead, put your tree in there again. You know where you got about 2 or 3 inches sticking out, and then just press the dirt around it, and that's all you should need. Never let your tree sit in the ground, or in the water too long. If they get like this, where they have all these roots on them, and the top has sprouted out, this thing is worthless. You might as well just throw it away. It's no good. You can also plant some of these taller ones. We've sold some of these before. They do pretty well. Again, we like to use the auger. We will go in a full 2 feet and then put this into the hole 2 feet long, and that really gets a good start, and we like to do that. The other option is when you are going to set up, if you're setting up a windbreak, there's one thing to remember: you want to plan ahead if you can. We like to plan ahead about a year ahead of time. If you know where it's going to be planted, you're going to want to spray some circles with some Roundup or glyphosate. We like to do that. The ground is so much easier to work with, and we'll explain a little bit about our herbicide over here. If you're going to lay out a windbreak, good thing to use is something like a string. You got a string and a couple stakes. You can pull this out, put it in, and then you've got a nice straight line. That works really good. Those can be picked up at any hardware store or lumber yard. After you get the string pulled out, then you're going to want to get your spacing. A lot of different things you can use there. Some people just step it off with your feet, and you'll get close. We've got this little machine here. You just push it. It's got a little meter on it, tells how many feet are in between everything. And when you're got it to the point where you know where you want to put in a tree, you need some way to mark it. These little things are awful handy. You just touch them, and they'll put a little spot in the ground, and you can use that for a spot, or get yourself some flags and just go ahead and flag where your trees are going to be planted. A good idea the flags work good because you can lay it all out and then look at it and say, uh-oh, this isn't going to work. We need to maybe make a bend in it or change something. So flags work good. This works good. A stick, anything you can use to kind of mark the road. That does help too. We talked about planting the cuttings. Let's talk about planting the potted ones. These are very easy to plant too. There's different ways you can use. An auger works really good on these. There's one of our augers there. This works pretty good. You can rent one if you've got a lot to put in. My thought is maybe rent one. That would be a good way to get a lot of good, get them done fast. I like to use a spade on a lot of these too. I still like using my spade. It's just something I grew up with. And if you're ever using any kind of a spade, one thing you remember is always sharpen the blade. So many times I have people that say, oh, that was the hardest work I ever did, and their spade was so dull, they might have been using a teaspoon. It worked about the same way. So always sharpen your spade. You only sharpen the inside. You're going to go at an angle like this with some kind of a grinder or file. Never sharpen the outside of your spade. Okay, for planting these, I'm just going to kind of set it here. We would set it in the right position. We would just go about 2 inches around the tree. We would just go around it 2 inches. We would set the tree off to the side, and we go ahead and dig our hole. And I like to put it on some kind of a rug or something so that the dirt doesn't all get away from you. Try to throw the dirt uphill. It makes it a lot easier for putting down in there. Now on your potted trees, these are completely different than any other tree you'll plant. We like to plant them a foot deeper than what they are in the pot. Again, this is the only tree you do this with. You're going to want a hole from here to here. Now if it's a little deeper or a little shallower, not going to make any difference. Very simple. Pop it out of the pot, drop it in the hole, kick the dirt back in, press it down, you're all done. It goes very, very fast. Okay, that's the easy part. You got your trees planted. Now what? Now comes the hard part, keeping that plant alive. I recommend using herbicides around your plants. I think it works the best. Never try to plant something in the sod like this and leave it. It just will never grow well. One thing about sod is if you get 1 inch of rain, your tree will get no water. That sod will absorb that whole inch and release it back into the air. I like to keep the ground bare around it, and I myself recommend herbicides. I've got kind of a different display here of different sprayers we use, different herbicides. Always my favorite is Roundup or glyphosate. It's got, there's lots of different names for it, but it's got the 41% glyphosate. Any farm store probably has these. If you go in, try to get the farm chemicals. It's usually in the back somewhere, and you should be able to buy a gallon of this 41% glyphosate for about $25. So that's really good. And if you don't use anything else, if you spray maybe twice a year with that, you're going to control most of your vegetation. Never spray more than twice a year with your Roundup. Okay, if you want to put in a pre-emergent, and a pre-emergent is a product that keeps things from growing back. Your Roundup is a contact herbicide. Whatever it touches, it kills. The pre-emergent is a herbicide that keeps it from growing back. We like the herbicide called Acument, and it has the herbicide pendimethalin in it. And it really works good. We like the 2% rate, and we like to make sure we have the right amount. We've got these little cups that we measure here. That's 2 ounces per gallon. So we would put in, if we were going to mix it up, we'd put in 2 ounces of the Roundup or glyphosate, and we'd put in 2 ounces of the Acument into 1 gallon of water. Always follow your label directions, because that's the law. You got to go by your label directions, and this is suitable for what we're doing here. That Acument's kind of expensive. It comes in 2.5 gallon containers, which is about enough to do 10,000 trees. You probably won't going to have that many. So an alternative is to use the Roundup again, spray around your trees. And then we have this stuff called Preen. You can buy this just about anywhere. It's got a cute little shaker here. You shake out the granulars. And surprisingly, the same herbicide that is in the Acument is in the Preen. So it does the same thing. The only thing is, this is about $25. And I kind of tried to figure out how much of that is in this whole container here. And I think it's probably about 4 tablespoons. So it's very expensive for what you get. It does work, but again, it's something easy to get a hold of. The Acument, that is something that usually you go online and just put that name into your search engine, and you should be able to find that. The Roundup or glyphosate, that's usually easy to find almost anywhere. And we've got the different things you can use here. We've got a 4-gallon sprayer. I like to use that. 2-gallon sprayer. And some people, if you just got a few trees, even use one of these little sprayers, a little pump-up sprayer. Steel makes that. Those all work. And so you got your tree in your ground, or you got your your plant in the ground. So what do you do then? You want to spray around it, and you want to do it carefully. You don't want to get the herbicide on the stem. I usually recommend you stay about 3 to 4 inches away from the stem. And if you've never used herbicide before, practice a little. Set up a little stick in your yard or a rock and practice spraying around that stick a few times so you know what you're doing. Just use some plain water if you need to, but practice first. Now, if for some reason you were spraying around this tree and you got some herbicide on the stem, something happened, you got it wet. If this gets wet with that Roundup, it will kill it. So what do? You keep a little wet rag in your back pocket. You get down here and you wash that off. Make sure you do it a couple times and wash that herbicide off. That kind of covers most of that with the herbicide. If you have any questions, drop me an email. I'll be glad to explain. We have our own little sheet that we give out on the right way to for the spraying and what we recommend. Now with these, if you're doing these in a windbreak and you got it in the ground, what I recommend is after it's in the ground, of course it's going to be in the ground about this far, that you take a pair of clippers or whatever you need and cut the tree off at waist level, right here. Clip. So if this was in the ground, I would just take my clippers and cut it off waist level. What that does is it causes that thing to bush out and give you a lot more stems. And that's what you want. More stems is more windbreak protection. And don't think that you're hurting the plant any, or you're making it grow slow, or you're actually stimulating and not a lot of new growth. And a lot of times by the end of the first year, on a plant this size that we cut off waist high, it's already 10 feet tall. Second year, it's usually 16 feet tall. So after just a couple years, these can be a really nice size. Now with your cuttings, usually the little 15-inch cuttings, the first year we like to think they're about 3 to 4 feet tall. Again, works on how much rain do you get, what's your soil conditions, have you controlled the vegetation around your plants. That's very important. After they get to growing, then you've got the next issue, animals. There's lots and lots of animals that like to eat Austree leaves and the bark. Some of them that we have problems with in the winter time, of course, we have rabbits, we have deer, and probably one of the worst ones is voles. And voles, you hardly ever see them. They're little skinny mice that got a little pointy nose on them. But this is one that I planted this spring, and I know you can't see it, but it's got all these little bite marks in there, and it already ate the bark off my new tree. So again, the main thing with voles is control that vegetation around your tree. Keep it bare. The first winter, you're going to want to mow that area down as short as you can get it. Clip it as short as you can get it. Don't put any wildlife cover in there. You don't want wildlife the first couple years on these Austrees. Spray around them. If you need to, you can use something like this to put around the stem. That can help with like the rabbits and the voles if you get down close to the ground. Sometimes we have people call up and say, my Austrees aren't growing. And what we've usually found out is it's the deer. The deer are coming in and nipping the ends of your Austrees off, and it looks like they're not growing. If you look at the ends, if they look like they've been nipped off, that's usually the problem there. So you have to do something about them. That pretty much covers what I think we need to talk about with the Austree. Again, if you have any questions, contact me, Kevin Kelly, at windbreaktrees.com, and I will sure respond back to you. I have lots and lots of emails every day from people, so we're glad to help out and get those trees growing on your property so that you can get protected from the wind. And there's nothing worse than a windy location. This will give you something fast, and I think you'll be happy with it. Then after a few years, your tree should look like these Austrees here that we put in about 15 years ago.